independent in thought, and punk rock in life. It's the Chad Benson Show.
Steve Gruber sitting in for Chad again this Friday, and Chad's off with some Christmas cheer and pre-New Year celebrations, I hope. Hope he spends time with his family. For me here, it has been a very busy Friday, a Friday that has me quite angry, to be honest with you. Because as we look at what's going on with the government shutdown, day 7 of this partial shutdown, and the battle and the argument over the border wall and funding, as if $5 billion is some giant pile of money in this government with a $3.8 trillion budget, which of course it's not. And we watch this battle go on, and then we see the news of a young police officer, 33-year-old Ron Singh, a 7-year veteran of the Newman, California Police Department, with a wife and a 5-month-old daughter. He comes to stop a man who he believes is driving drunk. A gun battle ensues. Officer Singh mortally wounded. His last transmission on the radio that shots had been fired and he had been hit. The suspect flees the scene. And a short time later, Officer Singh dies. The first officer from Newman, California to ever pass away in the line of duty. Dead. Ron Singh, a legal immigrant. A man who came here from Fiji with the idea that he just wanted to be an American, that he wanted to be in law enforcement, that he wanted to protect his community and his family and his people in that area. And that's what he was doing when he stopped a man he thought was driving drunk, a man that he thought was putting the people in his community at risk. And suddenly, shots are exchanged. And we now know the man firing an Officer Singh at Ron Singh was an illegal alien himself. This is a compare and contrast moment, my friends. We look at a Ron Singh who came to America, took extra classes, wanted to learn English especially well so that he could be understood when he spoke on the police radio. A guy that just recently took his sergeant's exam and passed. He was about to be promoted. A man who had his partner Sam in the car, but Sam couldn't help because Sam is a canine officer, helpless to do anything when her handler was gunned down. So you have the very best about what America is about for legal immigration. Here's a man who came here, who wanted to be part of the American fabric, wanted to defend this country and this flag. In fact, he had just sent a picture to his fellow officers, a selfie of himself with his Christmas tree and an American flag in the background. And then you've got a man with a violent background who's not even supposed to be here, who has a gun illegally, which, by the way, is a 10-year felony. If you're an illegal alien in America and you have a gun, that at a minimum is a 10-year felony. Now it's a capital offense because he gunned down everything that's good about immigration in America and showed us everything that is bad. And all of this with the background and the backdrop of the government shutdown and the battle between the White House and the alt-left when it comes to funding the wall. And for those in Newman, California, in Stanislaus County, it's been a heartbreaking 24 hours, a crushing 24 hours. For the police chief there, Randy Richardson, it was almost too much. He is torn up, to say the least. But he came to the cameras to talk about his colleague, his fellow law enforcement officer, his friend, Ron Singh. Here are some of the things he had to say. Bite 3. Go.
I did not know Christmas morning at 4 o'clock in the morning when I said goodbye to him and sent him off to his family that it would be the last time that I saw him. This was Ron. He moved the Christmas tree in front of the flag to take his own picture to send to us. He wasn't wanting to work Christmas, but he knew he had to. It just fell on his squad, and he was okay with it. He was a canine handler. His dog there is Sam. Sam was with him when this tragic event took place. When I pulled Sam out of the car, Sam was wearing a Mrs. Claus outfit.
Stop right there. Here's the point about Ron Singh and the people that he touched. Good-looking guy, great-looking family, young wife, 5-month-old daughter, just celebrating Christmas. As an American, 7 years on the force. had passed his sergeant's exam, was on his way to a promotion, and then this. He sounds like the kind of guy you'd want as a police officer in your town. I would have wanted him in my town. And how does Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer or any of the anti-wall, anti-security, anti-sovereignty, anti-border security crowd, how do they handle this? How do you look at somebody like Ron Singh in California? California that embraces sanctuary cities, that embraces the notion of ignoring federal law enforcement, of just following the laws you like because the ones you don't like, they don't really matter. How do you look these people in the face? How do you tell them we're doing the right thing? It's good for America. Really, California? The least educated state of all, California. Number one in the percentage of residents 25 and older who have never gotten through the 9th grade. Dead last in high school graduation rates. Number one in welfare. And these are the people that are telling you it's a great idea to have open borders and sanctuary cities. Really? Because it's done so many wonderful things for California. You know, as goes California, so goes the rest of the country, we're told. And I say, God, I hope not. Because California, what you're doing to yourselves, you're committing suicide in many ways, ignoring the rule of law, taxing the daylights out of your citizens, and then allowing young people like Ron Singh, who is an American patriot and a hero, being gunned down by an illegal alien. And there will be those on the left that say, I can't believe you're politicizing this. There's no other way to look at this. There are two sides to this discussion. There is the Ron Singh side and the suspect for which the manhunt continues. They found his truck. They know where he lived. He has a common name. That's why we're not releasing the name. He has a common name, and we don't want the wrong people targeted. But we do want this brutal cop killer found. And I can tell you this, without question, the Stanislaus County Sheriff Adam Christensen, he's angry. He's really angry, but he's limited in what he can say because of the laws in California, because of the way the laws have been stacked against him and other members of law enforcement, certainly when it comes to working with federal agencies and coordinating and making sure that dangerous criminals like this killer aren't on the streets. Listen to Adam Christensen. Listen to the sheriff of Stanislaus County just for a moment here. It's bite one. Gauge this feeling of anger in his voice. It's palpable. Bite one. Go.
This suspect, unlike Ron, who immigrated to this country lawfully and legally to pursue his lifelong career of public safety, public service, and being a police officer, this suspect is in our country illegally. He doesn't belong here. He's a criminal. We will find him. We will arrest him. And we will bring him to justice. Now, I want to thank and recognize that we have involved in this investigation from the very moment that the Sheriff's Office and other agencies responded to this tragedy. Our homicide team, our crime scene investigation team, multiple specialty teams, special investigations units, our federal law enforcement partners, state and local, all working collaboratively, like we do, to find our suspect.
You hear that? You say, working with federal law enforcement agencies like we do to find our suspect. Except in California, many there would have you believe that somehow it's better for local law enforcement to ignore federal collars. When an illegal alien gets picked up and put in jail, even violent felons, if they're picked up on a misdemeanor, for example, and ICE comes along and says, put a retainer on that guy, local law enforcement isn't allowed to. Under new California law, local enforcement of the laws takes precedent, and the federal laws are completely ignored. ICE is ignored, the retainers are ignored, and what happens is dangerous felons end up back on the streets. Dangerous felons end up back on the streets of California, and they would like to do for the rest of us what they are doing for themselves, and I say, no thank you. California, no thank you. I want our kids to graduate from high school I want our poverty rates to go down. I want our welfare rates to go down. I want to have a merit-based system when we invite people into this country to become Americans. People like Ron Singh, the kind of people we want in this country. Good people, hardworking people, people that want to work extra hours so they can speak better, talk better, communicate better, and do more to become true Americans. Those are the people we want to embrace. The president now weighing in on this. I'll tell you what he had to say in a tweet earlier today when we come back. Steve Gruber sitting in for Chad Benson on The Chad Benson Show.
Welcome to the Alt Middle, where solutions live and ignorance dies. The Chad Benson Show.
Continuing on a Friday, Steve Gruber sitting in for Chad Benson. You can find out more about me at stevegruber.com. I appreciate the opportunity to be here as we sort out this manhunt in California for the murderer, for the killer of a police officer, an illegal alien gunning down and murdering a legal immigrant, a man who came here, became a naturalized citizen. Ron Singh became a police officer because he wanted to serve his community. And today, his family planning for his funeral, his 5-month-old daughter, his wife, his entire community, and his police family devastated by all of this. And all of this with the backdrop of the government shutdown because the Democrats think it's a politically winning argument for them. Not that they believe that keeping the border open is a good idea. Not that they believe that Donald Trump is wrong about a barrier at the border, whether it's a fence or a wall or whatever you want to call it. They don't think that. No, they just think they can score some cheap political points. Well, maybe they can go explain that to the family of Ron Singh and his widow. And maybe in a few years they can explain that to his 5-month-old daughter, who's going to grow up without her father. A man who came here because he wanted so desperately to be an American. And he came here from paradise. I mean, Fiji, not exactly bad real estate. But he wanted to be an American and everything that it stood for. And it's on that backdrop, with everything that's going on, that the president was up early today tweeting, and he's pulling no more punches. He says that they may be forced to close the southern border entirely if the obstructionist Democrats do not give us the money to finish the wall and also change the ridiculous immigration laws that our country is saddled with. I couldn't agree more with President Trump today on that. It's time to either you fix the problem, where more than 3,000 people a day on some days run across the border, unvetted, unchecked, unleashed upon all of us. It has to be brought under control. You can't let it continue the way it is. And by the way, startling facts from the FBI today, from the NICS system, from the instant background check system. This is startling. You have to hear this statistic. As of November 30th, 2018, the stats are in for the number of people that have been rejected on gun purchases by the FBI background check. Far and away the number one reason people were rejected in 2018 to buy firearms in America is because they were unlawful or illegal residents here in the United States. Think about that. 7,800,000 times plus, almost 8 million times in 2018 alone, and only through the end of November, according to the FBI, illegal aliens, unlawful residents of the United States attempted to purchase firearms and were blocked. Almost 8 million times. It is by far and away the number one reason. So let's apply a little common sense to that, shall we? The Democrats would have you believe, the alt-left would have you believe, the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortezes of the world would have you believe there's only 11 or 12 million illegal aliens in all of the United States. Well, if that's true, and there were 7.8 million attempts to buy guns illegally by illegal aliens, then you're telling me the rate of illegal aliens trying to purchase firearms is 3 out of 4. 75% of illegal aliens are trying to buy guns in America, according to the numbers provided by the left, because I happen to trust the FBI when they say people were turned down because they attempted to buy guns and they're not in the country legally, they're here as illegal aliens. Well then, apply the numbers. which brings you to the point that obviously those numbers are not real. Nobody believes those numbers. Nobody believes there are only 11 million illegals in the country, more like 23, 24 million. If you go to the Yale studies, they're pretty obvious that they have been undercounted and underreported for years and years. The number could, in fact, be higher. So here we stand on day 7 of a government shutdown. On one side, you have Donald Trump saying, listen, we need border security. We can no longer have people running across the border unvetted, unchecked, and then unleashed on all of us. Can't have that. And on the other side, you've got the lizard, Chuck Schumer. Good Lord. Can you imagine sitting across from that guy like at Thanksgiving? Good. And then you've got Nancy Pelosi, who right now in her own home state of California has a police officer gunned down by an illegal alien who apparently was driving drunk. The officer tried to pull him over. The legal immigrant, the naturalized American citizen, does the right thing, tries to protect his community, gets gunned down in the process, and the illegal alien flees. And in California and elsewhere, they would have you believe if you don't think that that's proper, that somehow there's something wrong with you. If you believe in border security and a fence and enforcing immigration laws that are on the books, somehow you're a racist. You're xenophobic. You're a misogynist. There's something wrong with you. You don't like people of color. Well, let's go back to the drawing board, because the young gentleman that was murdered today, 33 years old, after 7 years on the force in Newman, California, is a man of color. The illegal alien that murdered him in cold blood during a traffic stop, also a man of color. This has absolutely nothing at all to do with race. Get past that. That talking point is old, tired, and fictional. Fictional. It's not real. The truth is, borders are not new. They've been around my entire life. The failure to enforce them, well, that's something kind of new. We'll continue to talk about it, and chasing billions of dollars and trying to spend it before the clock runs out. Steve Gruber sitting in for Chad Benson on The Chad Benson Show.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent in thoughts and punk rock in life. It's The Chad Benson Show.
Continuing this Friday conversation, Steve Gruber sitting in for Chad Benson. You can follow me on Facebook and Twitter and find out more at stevegruber.com, and, of course, do the same for Chad. He's out enjoying some time off during the holidays, and good for him. And while that's going on, the rest of us are back here trying to figure out how we get a border wall paid for. I mean, this argument back and forth about $5 billion seems pretty disingenuous, frankly. I mean, honestly, when you have a $3.8 trillion budget, we know that we've spent well in excess of a couple $2 trillion in Afghanistan and Iraq. We're spending tens of billions of dollars just hanging around in Syria for the bit that we do that. And it goes on and on and on. Afghanistan has been a 17-year effort, and yet the Democrats, they throw this whole disingenuous, the border wall, it's way too expensive. It's $5 billion. Yeah, and so what? That's a rounding error. You know, we have $400 billion spent by the United States government every year. In a study that I saw from Michigan State University, $400 billion spent annually that is not authorized. It's not even authorized to spend, and we do it anyway. How that's even legal or possible is beyond me. But luckily, I've got somebody here to help me sort it out and explain where the money comes, where the money goes, and why right now today we're in a mad dash to spend something like $50 billion because you have to use it or lose it, and they have to use it up before the end of each year, each fiscal year. Adam Andrzejewski here, CEO and founder of OpenTheBooks.com, something I fully support. Adam, welcome to the program.
Great to be on the program, Steve. Thank you very much for your interest in our work. I think there's, with the national debt crossing $21 trillion, what that means for every man, woman, and child in the country, it's $60,000 for each of us. If you're a family of four, your share of the national debt is $240,000. I mean, how's that money ever going to be paid back if we don't get our hands and shake spending like a rat terrier? Shake out the waste.
I like the rat terrier visual. I like that a lot. I like that a lot. Well done. Get a good grip on it. Don't let go and shake it until it gives up. I appreciate that. But here we are looking at the debts, the deficits, the money being spent. It's a Republican problem. It's a Democrat problem. They're all happy to spend all the money. And so when we talk about $5 billion, which is all the president's saying he needs right now for the border wall, and the Democrats, oh, that's far too expensive. We can't do that. It's absolutely absurd, isn't it?
Well, it is absurd. As you referenced, $50 billion went out the door in the last 7 days of the fiscal year. What that means is 1 out of every $9 of federal money spent on contracting on the year, it left the store in the last 7 days of the year. So, Steve, it's a real problem when the federal agency heads can't even spend all the money that Congress is appropriating for them.
And just so I'm clear, Adam, it's not that they had to spend it because they had to wrap up a project or they had this going on, that. They had to spend it because if they didn't find a way to spend it, it wouldn't be on next year's budget. When you say use it or lose it, it would have been pared out of next year's budget. $50 billion in the last 7 days of the fiscal year. We're talking about a $5 billion need to continue the wall for 250 miles. So the amount of money that there was a mad dash to spend across government inside the swamp is 10 times or more what Donald Trump is asking for right now to reopen the government and start with serious work on a southern border fence and a southern border wall and real security along the Mexican-American border. Am I right? Did I get it?
You're absolutely right. That's a real need the country has. With many of the dollars that were spent in the last week of the fiscal year, it was just abject waste. For instance, we found $6.2 million spent on CrossFit gym equipment, including the State Department specified in their contract for jump ropes that they specifically needed the brand endorsed by CrossFit star Rich Froning. You've got $20,000 going out the door on a grand piano. They bought Fender guitars, saxophones. They bought...
Whoa. What, Fender guitars? Why? So they can sing the blues while the country goes down the toilet? I mean, what are the Fender guitars? I love Telecasters. I love Stratocasters. Why the hell would any government employee need either of those things?
Exactly. And that's why this use it or lose it spending is so illuminating. The State Department on whiskey and booze in the last week spent $150,000 to restock the liquor cabinets in the embassies around the world. And there's
hold on again. I have to stop. I can't. You make me go. Wait a second, because when I fill out my expense reports for my small company, and I do my tax returns to the Internal Revenue Service, oftentimes alcohol is not an allowed expense. I can guarantee you this: at almost every company I have ever worked as an employee, an expense report can be turned in for meals. Liquor almost never covered. But for the United States government, I guess we'll just pick up the tab and have an open bar.
That's right. It was wine and whiskey for $150,000. And that every single year for the past 3 years, when we've given oversight to the end of the year spending, we find massive amounts of whiskey and wine purchased in the last week to restock the liquor cabinets in those embassies around the world.
And with the guitars, with the guitars, you've got wine, whiskey, and song. You've got the trifecta.
We just mind mapped it. We just mind mapped what's going on.
Clearly, Adam, you and I got in the wrong line of business. I mean, you look at somebody, and I'll use this, such an easy illustration. When Al Gore left being vice president in January of 2001, he was worth about $1.5 million. And today, according to most credible reports, he's worth north of $400 million, on his way to $500 million. I just saw reports recently that Barack and Michelle Obama are on track to become billionaires. So it's not just that they spend all of this money when they're in office and they buy themselves elections, I suppose, might be a way to put it, because they bring this pet project home and spend this pork. They do that, but then they make themselves independently wealthy, and people in Congress actually wonder why they are so despised.
Well, you're exactly right. The elites that are, quote, running this country for many, many years are enriching themselves at the trough funded by we the people. I want to give you some specific examples. Robert Redford, the Hollywood actor, he's got a foundation called the Sundance Institute, and he battles every single year for more money from Congress on funding for arts and humanities grants. His foundation discloses gross assets of $50 million, and then during the Obama years, he took grants for over $3 million from the National Endowment of the Arts. I want to give you another example.
Hold on, just so I'm clear on that. $3 million in grants to Robert Redford's foundation, Robert Redford being worth tens of millions of dollars for all of his successful movies, which, by the way, many of them were terrific and I enjoyed. But the fact that he would get a grant, free money, never has to be paid back, to me that just smacks of cronyism.
And he can't make the argument that they needed the money. They got $50 million in the bank.
You know, it's good to be liked, right? But again, I come back to you and I are in the wrong business, Adam. We're just in the wrong business because.
Well, here's another example, Steve.
Go ahead.
Here's another example that most people don't know about. One of the leading progressive think tanks in the world, and certainly in Washington, D.C., is the Brookings Foundation. And the Brookings Institution, during the Obama years, from 50 federal agencies, took contracts and grants for more than $20 million. Now, they also can't argue that they need the money. They have annual revenues over $100 million, and they've got about $500 million in the bank.
It's unbelievable. And Adam Andrzejewski here. He is the CEO and founder of OpenTheBooks.com. And you can go to OpenTheBooks.com because the real effort here is to peel back sunshine as the greatest disinfectant. But, you know, you look and you wonder because there's always a lot of crying and screaming and carrying on, and members of Congress sound like smashed cats when you say, hey, we need to look at the books. You know, they're either going to die of embarrassment or shame or a combination thereof if we actually had a chance to look at what was going on and say, hey, let me see that book right there. You spent what? On what? You know, if the average guy came along, a farmer from Iowa, a businessman from Michigan, a sole proprietor from Florida, and looked at the books and the abuse that is going on, these people in Congress would be shamed and embarrassed. At least I would hope they would, because they should be.
And that's our mission at OpenTheBooks.com, is to get the information to we the people, to hold the powerful accountable for tax and spend decisions. So that $5 billion that you need for the wall, think about this. If you don't give grants to the 8 schools of the Ivy League, now keep in mind the Ivy League colleges have over $120 billion in their endowments. They could get free tuition for the next 51 years without raising another single red cent for their endowment. That's how much $120 billion is. They don't need federal money, yet on grants alone, every single year, nearly $5 billion flows to the 8 schools of our most wealthy and elite, the Ivy League.
Because if I'm not mistaken, Adam, the way it works oftentimes with endowments is that somebody goes to one of these prestigious universities, they go out, they do well, they create, you know, great products and great companies, and they make tremendous amounts of money for themselves. They become billionaires themselves, and then they give back in great truckloads of cash to these universities. Why do they need money from me?
They quite frankly don't need money from us. Again, they can't make the argument that they need the money, but they're so dialed into the federal government's checkbook, they want that cash.
But I have to be clear about something that happened here recently, a few months ago here, because make no mistake, what happened when the last boondoggle of a spending plan went through, not the one that's gone through recently, but the big one, it unleashed more spending, discretionary spending, than we have seen in my lifetime in Washington. And it was run and led by the Republicans. So it's easy to blame the Democrats. It's easy to say those guys spend too much money, and they do. But when the Republicans join them at the party, at the trough, the slop trough of your cash and mine, it is unbelievable.
So over the course of the last 2 fiscal years, Republicans in Congress negotiating with Democrats, they greenlit $30 billion additional on top of the Obama year spending, $30 billion of additional discretionary spending. So Republicans have, you know, this is bipartisan. There's a bipartisan spending addiction in Washington, D.C.
No question. Now, Adam, hold that thought right there because I want to ask you about another number that is so mind-boggling, so jaw-dropping. I want to ask you about it, but I want to do that on the other side of the break. Adam Andrzejewski here, CEO and founder of OpenTheBooks.com. Steve Gruber sitting in on the Chad Benson Show.
Experiencing separation anxiety? That's dumb. Check out Chad 24/7 at his website, ChadBensonShow.com, and on iTunes, free. The Chad Benson Show. Never feel lonely again.
A couple of days ago, I was filling in for Chad. Steve Gruber here, and I was in Orlando. Loved it, by the way. We'll talk about the economy in Orlando here a little bit later in the program, but it was 75, 76 degrees. I just looked out the window here in my northern studio in northern Michigan, and the snow is starting to fall. So that's kind of a compare and contrast for you a little bit. During the break, I was thinking about going into the wrong profession again. I was thinking, obviously I didn't follow the right career. You look at a Paul Ryan, for example, who's leaving the House as Speaker of the House after, one session as Speaker of the House, and so he'll go on and he'll go over to Madison Avenue or wherever he ends up, K Street, I suppose, and he'll end up being a lobbyist, he'll end up being a consultant, he'll end up being on 27 boards. And Paul Ryan, this time 5 years from now, on this date 5 years from now, will be worth tens of millions of dollars. It's inescapable. It's automatic. It's a career path unlike any other. Adam Andrzejewski continuing with us now, the CEO and founder of OpenTheBooks.com. Adam, thank you so much for taking the time to be here on this Friday.
Well, great to be on the program. We, as you know, Steve, we just went live on our website with 19 million public employees' salaries from fiscal year 2017. What this represents is nearly every single salary from every single public employee at every public body, every government in the country. So if you want to see what your local police chief is making all the way to those folks in your schools, municipalities, in your state government, all the way to the federal level, we've posted it all at openthebooks.com. And what we have found
Which I appreciate.
Thank you. What we found is there's 145,000 public employees at every level of government that out-earn every governor of the 50 states, and that threshold salary is $190,000 a year. So a lot of people are getting very wealthy off the backs of our tax dollars.
Yeah, because a lot of them, as you know, and you've seen this happen numerous times, they'll leave one position in state government, and this happens in a lot of states. It's not. I've been beating on California here for a few days only because they deserve it. In the way they conduct themselves, they deserve all the wrath that I give them. But a lot of states, you'll see somebody leave one post in state government, transfer over to another post in state government. They start collecting a very handsome pension, a six-figure pension or better from this post, while getting a six-figure income from this post. Next thing you know, they're getting $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. You've seen that. But here's the number that I really want to share, Adam, that I really want to look at, because to me, this is unbelievable. We talked about the national debt, almost $22 trillion. And at some point, somebody comes to the door and says, hey, it's time to pay up. You owe us the money, right? In less than 10 years, the projection now is that the money we pay just on the interest on our debt will be $1 trillion a year, less than 10 years from today. That's not staggering. That's like a nuclear bomb going off in our financial standing in the world and in this country. And how do you avoid a recession or a depression or a complete financial meltdown when your interest payments are $1 trillion a year?
So we actually see it the way you do. Now, economists are going to differ on how much of a threat the debt poses to the economy. But I share your view. At OpenTheBooks.com, we share the view, actually, of President Obama's chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Mike Mullen. Now, Mullen said that the debt is our greatest national security threat.
It is.
Here's what everyone can agree on. Everyone can agree right now that the future and the ongoing concern of the greatest nation in the history of the world, the United States of America, is premised on not misallocating our current tax dollars. We must make sure that when we spend a dollar of our hard-earned taxes, it's spent honestly and efficiently. And if it's supposed to help people, that's what the dollar is for, but it's not meant to be wasted, and it's not meant to abuse taxpayers.
And it's not meant to be something to rush towards spending in the last 7 days of a fiscal year to make sure you spend every dime the taxpayers. That's the working man and woman's money of this country. Remember, only half of the working people in America actually contribute to the federal tax base. Half. And it's going below 50% here soon. Our enemies could not beat us militarily. Our enemies could not beat us politically. Our enemies are destroying us financially, and that is leading into political disaster as well. I'll give you the last word on it, Adam.
So let's just go through a couple of examples, 3 examples on how our money was, taxpayers were abused last year. $1.4 million.
Real quick.
$1.4 million funded sex education for California prostitutes who could probably teach the class. $1 million was spent by NASA to prepare the religions of our country for the discovery of extraterrestrial life.
Well,
$10 million went to the airport on Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts.
And it just goes on and on and on. Adam, I have to leave it right there. Great conversation. Really appreciate you being here on a Friday. Adam Andrzejewski, the CEO and founder of OpenTheBooks.com. Go find it, OpenTheBooks.com. Got to leave it right there. Adam, have a great weekend, my friend. We'll talk sometime soon. If you want to find out and just be shocked at what your government's spending and what's left, well, go look at it, OpenTheBooks.com. Steve Gruber sitting in for Chad Benson on the Chad Benson Show on a Friday.
Independent in thoughts and punk rock in life. It's the Chad Benson Show.
All right, it's Friday. Good to have you here. Steve Gruber sitting in for Chad Benson. And now we know that the cop killer in California has been taken into custody. Happened in just the last little bit here. It's the story we've been following because it is a compare and contrast story like we've not seen recently. It makes it so obvious and so easy to say, here's what's right about immigration, here's what's wrong about immigration. And if you've missed the story somewhere along the line, it's pretty simple. 33-year-old Ron Singh, an immigrant from Fiji who came to America because he wanted to be a police officer. He came to America because he wanted to be part of the American dream. So he left paradise being Fiji, and came to the United States. And for the last 7 years, he's been a police officer for the department in Newman, California. Just recently passed his sergeant's exam. He was about to get a promotion. He became a canine officer. And while patrolling here yesterday early, he sees a guy driving a car that appears to be intoxicated. He makes a stop for a DUI. Because he's dedicated his life in America to defending those around him. He's dedicated his life in America to being somebody on the front lines, somebody that protects their community, somebody that looks out for his family. And during the DUI stop, the traffic stop, guns blaze. There's a gun battle. His last transmission is that he has been shot, and the shots have been fired. He's been hit, and the suspect flees the scene. But now that suspect has been caught, the suspect, an illegal alien. So on one side of the ledger, you've got legal immigration. When you do background checks and vet people and figure out if they're going to contribute and how hard they will work to be Americans and how hard they will work to become part of this nation and part of their community. That is what Ron Singh personified. His murderer, who was taken into custody here just in the last little while, didn't care about assimilating into America. He didn't care about doing the right thing. In fact, the background checks now And the information we have now is that even though his name hasn't been released, he has been connected to violent Mexican drug gangs. He has been connected to those violent Mexican drug gangs that the president has talked about since the first time he came down the escalator to talk about running for president in 2015. And all of these things drop in the background of a government shutdown predicated on the fact that Democrats are refusing to give $5 billion for a border wall, predicated on the backdrop of the idea that these folks are refusing to secure the southern border either with a wall or a fence or a barrier of some sort, saying it's just too expensive or it's racist or it's xenophobic or Donald Trump somehow doesn't like brown people. Let me tell you something. When it comes to conservatives and people of color, we don't care at all. In fact, Ron Singh from Fiji is a man of color. A man of color who laid down his life to protect his community. He is the kind of police officer I would want in my community. He's the kind of police officer I would want protecting my children, my school, my wife, my family, my town. And he died at the hands of another man of color. The point being is, race has nothing at all to do with any of this. That is a diversion, a red herring, a political talking point that is absolutely meaningless and should be ignored. What should be focused on are the facts, and the facts are this. Borders are nothing new. We had borders in America 200 years ago, 100 years ago, and for the most part, up to a couple of years ago. Back in the 1980s, Ronald Reagan made a deal to give amnesty to several million people who came here illegally with the idea and the guarantee that he would get border security and a border wall. It never happened. In 2005, George W. Bush made a deal to build a border wall. People that voted in favor of that border wall included Senator Barack Obama, Senator Chuck Schumer, Senator Hillary Clinton. The fact of the matter is, these folks all stepped up and said they believed in border security, in border walls, in protecting the sanctity of this country, to keeping out illegal aliens, to keeping out drug gangs and drug dealers and those that would traffic in human beings and create this misery. Make no mistake, this opioid crisis that we face every day on the streets of America that claimed 70,000 lives last year, much of it is rooted in Mexico. And the president now seems he's had all he can take. 7 days ago, he said, no deal on the border wall, don't want to pay for it, no deal on funding the government. So we have a partial government shutdown, which doesn't really affect anyone unless you work in one of those government agencies in one of those jobs where maybe you won't see a paycheck. The last paychecks come today, December 28th. The next pay period, I believe, ends January the 11th. January the 11th. So we have a period of time here where we will find out if some of those people that are still called to work will get paid or not get paid. In the meantime, you saw the president travel to the Middle East, to Iraq, where he was embraced like a hero. And the only thing the Democrats could come up with is, well, he was signing hats. Did you see him? He was signing those Make America Great Again hats. That's not legal. He can't do that. That's breaking the rules. What, did Donald Trump bring hats? The answer is no, Donald Trump did not bring hats, but now here's what he's doing. He's bringing the heat. He's bringing the heat and he's bringing the common sense. Here's what he tweeted out earlier today. We will be forced to close the southern border entirely if the obstructionist Democrats do not give us the money to finish the wall and also change the ridiculous immigration laws that our country is saddled with. Hard to believe there was a Congress and president who would approve. It's time to fix the problem. It's time to fix the problem. We don't need any more Ron Singhs. Corporal Ron Singh, who had taken his sergeant's exam, was on his way to a higher position, well respected, loved by those around him. In fact, real quickly, I'd like you to hear one of his colleagues. One of his colleagues, his chief of police, at the Newman, California Police Department, Randy Richardson, who has never lost one of his officers. Torn apart today. Barely able to contain himself because of the pain and the hurt and the damage this has inflicted. An illegal alien murdering a man who had come here and immigrated legally, become a naturalized citizen, and began to live his American dream. Married a 5-month-old daughter who will never know her dad, will never remember him. And for Randy Richardson, almost too much to take. It's bite 3. Go.
I did not know Christmas morning at 4 o'clock in the morning when I said goodbye to him and sent him off to his family that it would be the last time that I saw him.
We
This
owe
was
these
wrong.
people more. I hear that voice. I'm affected emotionally. How can you not be? Here's a guy he's just torn up. Here's a guy that just wasn't a coworker. It's a guy who came here from another country and believes so much in America that he would do anything to become part of it. He took extra English classes so he could sound better on the radio when he was making transmissions and calls. In that last transmission, to say shots had been fired and he had been hit. We're better than this. We are better than this. I believe Californians are better than this. I think that most Californians need to look at this and say, you know what? Maybe it's time to rethink what we're doing. Maybe it's time to step back, take a breath, and realize what we're doing. Maybe it's not working. I mean, California, look at yourselves. Seriously, look at yourselves. You are the least educated state. You're number one in the percentage of residents 25 and older who never made it through the 9th grade. You're dead last in high school graduation. 18% of your kids going to high school drop out. You only have 12% of the population, California, and yet you have 35% of the welfare cases in this country. And now, coming next week, you have supermajorities in the state assembly and the California State Senate and a Democratic governor. It is single-party, liberal Democrat rule for California because it's been so successful so far. Why the hell not continue? Let's have some more of that. Thank you, sir. Whop, may I have another? Thank you, sir. Whop, may I have another? I mean, it's just getting pounded. And the taxpayers, the taxpayers of California, that's why millions are fleeing to places like Nevada, where taxes are cheap. They can flee across the border to Nevada just to get a break from the taxes. And there's more on the way because California is also broke $1 trillion in the hole. And so California would like now to bully the rest of us. They want more members of the U.S. Senate. They want more members in Congress. They've moved their primary date up to March the 3rd so they can try to flex their political muscle and impress their will upon the rest of us. And I've got to be honest, I don't want California influence anywhere outside of California because everything that I see looks like abject failure. Everything I see coming out of California looks like they're failing and failing miserably. Why would we want to be in debt like that? Why would we want poverty like that? Why would we want dropout rates that are that high or a percentage of the population, 10% of the adults in California, 25 and older, have never made it through the 9th grade? How shocking is that? How embarrassing is that? And yet what they'll tell you is we need more money for education. We need more money for our food programs. We need more money for Head Start and pre-K, and we need more money for education, and we need more money for support programs, and we need more money for jobs programs. And yet none of it works. None of it gets the job done. And then they say they want sanctuary cities because they want to be kind to the refugees and the immigrants coming from El Salvador and Honduras. And what do you end up with? You end up with sad cases like the death of Ron Singh. I want Nancy Pelosi to look into the eye of the widow of Ron Singh and say we're doing the right thing. How dare you, Nancy Pelosi? How dare you, the alt-left, to tell us we need more of this? No, we really don't. Steve Gruber sitting in for Chad Benson on the Chad Benson Show. We'll be right back.
No fake outrage here, just the real thing. The Chad Benson Show.
All right, I want to give a, well, I don't know how to put this. I was going to say a shout-out. I don't know if that's quite right, but Sears down to its last few hours. Sears, for those of us that are old enough to remember, Sears was, man, that was the dream book. Come Christmas, it was the dream book. You go to the Sears catalog, you go to the toy department, man, and you just sit there and dream. And it was something that my mother taught me way back then. Sometimes the dream, the way you imagine a gift or something is going to turn out, is more magical than the actual gift itself or how things actually turn out. And so we always look forward to the Sears catalog. It was big enough that, well, heck, people that are young enough to steal mom's car, they'd use it to sit on so they could drive mom and dad's car when they're on vacation. I mean, I heard stories like that. I don't know what that means exactly. But Sears is down to the end of the bankruptcy line. In order to have a shot at survival, there needs to be a $4.6 billion influx of cash. Now, there was a proposal put forth at one point by the current chair of the company, Eddie Lampert, to buy the company out of bankruptcy through his hedge fund, ESL Investments. But ESL was the only party that came to the table, and so far, I don't believe that that's an official bid. I don't believe that came through as an official bid. So the deadline is today to put in an official offer. I've watched The Wire today, haven't seen that happen. And if they don't show up, or if Lambert does show up and then isn't considered a qualified bidder and buyer, well then Sears will be parted out, and that'll be the end of it. Yeah, Sears would be parted out, and that would be the end of Sears Roebuck and Company after, 125 years. And what do they have? Something on the order of just shy of 70,000 employees. All right. The Dow, by the way, rallying just a bit here, speaking of a little bit of business news at the end of the day, putting another victory after yesterday, where they get 263 points yesterday, and before that 1,000 points. So all of those losses, that pummeling their thing on Wall Street, seems to have rallied a bit today, and that's good news. Now, before I go to the next break, I want to give a shout-out to a gentleman that lived to be 112 years old. The oldest military veteran in America died yesterday at the age of 112, Richard Overton. If you didn't hear this, what an incredible story. He served in the Army during World War II in segregated divisions because he is black. He's African American. Richard Overton died. Here's what I love. He credited his longevity on God, whiskey, and cigars. Amen. I mean, there's a guy who knew how to get it done, and I'd seen stories on Richard here over the past couple of years. But he credited his longevity after serving in the Army with God, whiskey, and cigars. He was at Pearl Harbor, and he was part of the 1887th Engineer Aviation Battalion. He worked in World War II from 1942 to 1945. He was in places like Palau, Micronesia, Iwo Jima, Japan. I mean, this guy served in a very hostile Pacific theater, in many places that were very hostile. And again, like I said, he was at Pearl Harbor. And he was born in 1906 in Bastrop County, just outside of Austin, Texas. It's also believed, based on the records we have right here, it's also believed he was the oldest living American. Not just the oldest living veteran at 112, but the oldest living American. And he had a love of God and country. Maybe more of a love for God, whiskey, and cigars, but hey, whatever gets you through the night, whatever gets you there. That's the important thing. Steve Gruber sitting in for Chad Benson on the Chad Benson Show. We'll be right back.
The Chad Benson Show.
independent in thought, and punk rock in life. It's The Chad Benson Show.
How many more times do we have to go through this when we, hear about a Kate Steinle or an Officer Singh, Ronald Singh, gunned down by an illegal alien. Ronald Singh himself, a legal immigrant to this country that came and went through all the right steps, did everything right, didn't run across the border, didn't try to cheat, didn't try to hide, isn't involved with guns and gangs. No, he was involved with law enforcement because he wanted to be an American patriot, and an American patriot, well, he certainly was. Steve Gruber sitting in for Chad Benson on the Chad Benson Show this Friday. The Remembrance Project is an organization that focuses on the lives stolen by those that are here illegally. Maria Espinoza, National Director of the Remembrance Project, joining me here on the program because it's an important day to remember Ron Singh's widow, his 5-month-old daughter, his canine partner Sam, who now we're told will be retired to spend the rest of her life with his widow and daughter. But Maria, thank you for being here.
Hi, Steve. Thanks so much for having me on. It's very unfortunate, sad, and it's just horrific that our lawmakers simply cannot protect Americans. And here we go again. How many more lives will be stolen, just like you mentioned here, how you introduced me. How many more lives will be stolen before these supposed politicians will take care of Americans? Yeah,
the angel families. It's like the angel families are irrelevant in the conversation for the alt-left, for the political left, for those liberals who would have you believe that somehow having a southern border wall, having security, defending America against people coming here unvetted, unchallenged, and then being unleashed on the rest of us, that somehow that's bigoted, that somehow that's a racist approach. And clearly, Maria, that's absurd, because what we have today is a police officer, a man of color, if it's that important. To me, it's not, but if you want to make that argument, here's a man of color who came to America, did everything right. The kind of police officer I would want in my neighborhood. The kind of police officer I'd want looking out for my children at the school bus crossing or downtown on a Saturday night if something looked a little sketchy. This is the guy I want, and he's gunned down and murdered after he tries to stop a guy from drunk driving, also a man of color. The point being is here, Maria, race has nothing at all to do with this.
Exactly, and neither does party affiliation either, Steve. So we have to stop politicizing American lives, American children, and here we are again. We've been in this since 2009 and trying to raise awareness and tell our legislators, but tell the people. Most importantly, we have to turn to the people, because we now know for years that these legislators will absolutely not do what's right. As you can see how they oppose and resist anything that's good on border security, on what President Donald Trump is trying to implement and the way he's trying to secure our nation and save lives. They absolutely oppose him. And this is people on both sides of the aisle, Steve. Paul Ryan, when he was Speaker, he vowed to not assist and support President Trump, and he held true to that. But Schumer and Pelosi, that they're just shameless.
Well, and in fact, I want to share something with you. I want to play something for the audience here. Because when you talk about this being a shift in policy, a shift in mentality, it is, because the Democrats don't believe America is going to be safer if we leave the border open. Democrats don't believe if we don't build the wall, it's going to be a safer America, a better America, a more prosperous America. They don't believe any of that. What they believe is they don't want to give Donald Trump a victory politically. They don't want to give Donald Trump a victory anywhere, and they're willing to put you and I and everyone else at risk, including the widow of Officer Singh. I mean, the fact of the matter is, his widow now, Ron Singh's widow, will have to pay that price and bear that burden. But I want to go back to 2011. Barack Obama, then president, holding the State of the Union address, talking about borders, American borders, time to fix them, time to clean them up, time to end illegal immigration. He was very strong about it. It's Bite 2. Go ahead and play that.
Now, I strongly believe that we should take on, once and for all, the issue of illegal immigration. And I am prepared to work with Republicans and Democrats to protect our borders, enforce our laws, and address the millions of undocumented workers who are now living in the shadows. I know that debate will be difficult. I know it will take time. But tonight, let's agree to make that effort.
And that was in 2011, Maria. So if you go back to 2005, you'll find that Senator Schumer, Senator Obama, Senator Clinton, they all voted to build a southern border wall, that it didn't happen. In 2011, then President Barack Obama says, let's agree to make that effort. It doesn't happen. And now they say having a border wall is somehow racist, somehow xenophobic, somehow it's a bigoted thing to do. They've lost their minds.
Oh, absolutely. It's lies, lies, and they hate Trump. And take a look. Obama is the man who set the policy for the Border Patrol agents, and sitting about 4 years ago in Austin, listening to these Border Patrol union presidents testify to the fact that they were told and ordered to allow a group of 6 individuals or fewer of illegal aliens to pass into our country. Don't stop them, let them through. The same with 40 pounds of drugs or less. So this is what's in our country. You know, a free-for-all America, and Americans have to take a second seat, a back seat to foreigners and our children as well. So the lives of our children seem to not matter. As these politicians, Steve, fill their campaign re-election coffers with the blood money of our children and American lives, you know, the bodies of all Americans killed by an illegal alien fills our coffins. And
well, here's something else that I came across today, just released by the FBI, Maria, and I want you to hear this because it is absolutely shocking. Maria Espinoza here, the National Director of the Remembrance Project, which honors and remembers Americans and legal residents here who have been killed by illegal aliens, people that should not be here. But from the FBI, we get this little tidbit, and it's really important. Active records for the NICS system, the instant background checks. The number one reason that people were rejected from buying firearms in America in 2018, and it's only current through November. December numbers have not been added yet. 7,836,600 illegal, unlawful aliens attempted to buy guns in America and were declined. It is by far and away the number one reason the FBI rejects an application for a firearm. It's because they are illegal aliens, unlawful residents trying to get firearms. That should shock the daylights out of everyone.
Oh, absolutely, Stephen. Take a look at that number again. That tells you everything that we need to know on how unsecure, how unsafe our communities are.
And you look at the fact that if the Democrats would stick to their numbers, they say there are 11 million illegals in America. If that were true, and we take the FBI numbers at face value, which I do, I believe the FBI is pretty good at this, it would mean that 75% of the illegal aliens in America are attempting to buy guns illegally, which, by the way, is a 10-year felony. It's a 10-year felony. If you use that firearm, it goes up exponentially. The fact of the matter is that's ridiculous. There's at least double that number of illegals in America, wouldn't you say?
Exactly. And I was going to say that 11 million number has been around for 10 years, and it's just laughable. It's flat out laughable that these, especially the Democrats, want us to believe that there are just this amount of illegals here and that we should ignore it. But, you know, we cannot ignore our laws, and that's why we're after the $25 billion fully fund to finish that wall. We need to build that wall and secure America and protect American lives. That's the bottom line, and that's what I want your listeners to do, is to call the White House and insist for Donald Trump to demand the full amount. Look, we just gave over $10.5 billion to Mexico and Central America, and yet there are 4 caravans on their way up from the Honduras countries and Guatemala coming up through Mexico and making their way to the border. So this is an invasion. Let me give you that phone number for your listeners to call President Trump. It's 202-456-1111.
Just for the record here, a little bit earlier, the president tweeting out that he will close the border. He will end trade deals. He will cut off aid to places like Honduras and Guatemala if they do not get their illegal caravans under control. He says he will shut down the border altogether. Of course, then some court from California, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, that circus will come along and say, oh, you can't do that. It's not constitutional. You're not allowed. Even though under plenary power, he certainly is allowed to do those things. But that's the other battle that this president faces. Not only is it a battle with the media that's dishonest on a regular basis, a battle with liberals who know that it won't make the country safer, but damn, they're not going to give the president a political victory. And then, of course, it's the battle against activist judges on the courts. A lot of places that we need to push back, Maria.
Oh, absolutely. And we've known this for several years. But, it tells you that this is a national emergency, Steve, and President Trump can declare that, get that wall built, and protect our borders, and that's what's going to take. And you can see how the illegal aliens are coming across and taunting the border agents and throwing rocks. And, yes, rocks do kill these agents, and we've memorialized a few of those agents who were killed by these illegal alien rock throwers and smashing in their heads with rocks. So
and just so we're clear about that, it's important because I want to go back to Officer Ron Singh here, Ronald Singh, who came here and became a police officer in Newman, California, and paid with his life today when he was murdered by an illegal alien, according to the police giving all the information and updates. When he was murdered here, his life was taken by an illegal as he was trying to be an American, a patriot, doing the right thing. And how does somebody like Nancy Pelosi look him in the eye and say, hey, leaving the border open is the right thing? How does somebody like Chuck Schumer try to tell the widow of Ron Singh that somehow they're doing things right? It's beyond the pale.
They don't, Steve, and they don't show up when we request meetings, to sit-down meetings with them. They absolutely ignore us. Our angel moms and dads now, Mrs. Singh and the angel wife, and her daughter, 5-month-old daughter, now will be raised without her father, the love and care. This is out of hand, and it has to stop. And the only way we're going to do that if we get serious about our border security, and that means to build a wall.
So what do you think it's going to take? The president now saying he's not going to open the government until they get money for the wall. And keep this in mind. We're talking about $4 billion, $5 billion, $6 billion at this phase, which in the size of the numbers we're talking about is almost, I don't want to say irrelevant because $5 billion is a lot of money, but compared to other things we spend money on, in the last 7 days of the fiscal year, agencies scrambled to spend $50 billion because if they didn't, they would lose it in next year's budget. That's 10 times the amount we're talking about here. Maria, we have to look out for these angel families, don't we?
Absolutely, for every single American, whether you're a Republican, Democrat, or independent. But take a look at this, Steve. We were promised a wall under the Reagan administration. There have been 7 amnesties since then. We spend over $130 billion per year on illegal aliens. That's adjudication of these lawbreakers, education and medication. They're having babies at a higher rate than we are because we're paying for that. But we are due this security. The very fundamental duties of our government is to secure our nation, protect Americans, and it's not being done. And, we need your listeners out there to even call across state lines, call other senators as well. Obviously, if they simply don't care about borders and they are voting for open borders and for illegal aliens and assisting them, then they don't care about a simple zip code of which state that you live in either. So we really need to get serious and rise up, and not sit back down until we get that border wall.
Maria, we got to leave it right there. If you want to find out more, it's theremembranceproject.org, theremembranceproject.org. Maria, keep up the good fight. We need to hear it. We need to keep hearing it. You need to keep pushing that message. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. And they can share the memorial panel of Officer Singh on our Facebook page, the remembranceproject.org. It is there. Remembrance Project and Stolen Lives Quilt, Facebook.
There you go. Maria Espinoza, thank you for being here. You're listening to The Chad Benson Show. Steve Gruber filling in on this Friday. We'll be right back.
Feel free to punk this punk rocker any time of the day or night. Reach Chad on Twitter at Chad Benson Show and on Instagram at Chad Benson Show. And oh yeah, the Chad Benson Show on Facebook too. Punk that.
Steve Gruber sitting in for Chad Benson today on this Friday. Earlier this year, I thought that it would be Molly Tibbetts that would become the person, the fuse that got lit that changed the attitude about illegal aliens and not having a secure southern border, but it turned out not to be so. Molly Tibbetts being the college girl, the young college girl murdered brutally by an illegal alien in Iowa while she was out for a run, dragged and murdered brutally in a cornfield. But now I wonder if the death of Officer Ronald Singh will be enough. Will that be enough to get the nation's attention? Will it be enough to get the attention of the people in California that would like to do for the rest of us what they've done for themselves, which is basically bankrupt themselves, create a state with the highest level of welfare, the highest level of high school dropouts, and by far the lowest percentage of adults 25 and older who never made it through the ninth grade, 10% in California. 1 in 10 adults 25 and older never made it through the ninth grade in California. And they believe somehow in their liberal, I don't know what you call this liberal confusion that somehow this is still the right path. And now they're going to have single-party rule here in just a few days, as Gavin Newsom will become the governor. Supermajorities in the California Assembly and the California Senate basically mean the Republicans are irrelevant in California. So anything that happens in California, including their pending bankruptcy, which is inevitable, you can't get around it, it's unavoidable, that's going to be solely in the hands of the Democrats. When California doesn't have enough water because they haven't built a reservoir in 40 years, that will solely be the possession of the Democrats. When California has more people murdered by illegal aliens because they believe in sanctuary cities and not enforcing federal laws, that will be on their hands, on the hands of the Democrats, because the Republicans at this point are nothing more than a footnote. And the old saying that somehow California goes first and then the nation follows, I certainly hope that's not the case. I certainly hope that's not the case, because I don't want to have happen to my home state of Michigan what I'm witnessing in California, where I'm seeing police officers murdered, legal immigrant police officers murdered by illegal aliens just because the police officers are trying to protect the community. A lot to think about this weekend, that's for sure. Steve Gruber sitting in for Chad Benson. Appreciate the opportunity to be on the Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show. Independent in thoughts and punk rock in life. It's the Chad Benson Show.
All right, it's Friday, my friends, and we're about to plow through it. Steve Gruber sitting in on the Chad Benson Show. Good to have you along for the conversation. And an intense conversation it is. The manhunt has come to an end in California. They found the cop killer. But to me, that's just part of the conversation. It's just a starting point. The cop killer being an illegal alien that was pulled over for drunk driving by a man who came to this country legally as an immigrant from the nation of Fiji, and he wanted nothing more than to be an American. Ronald Singh came here because he wanted to be an American. The American dream fueled him. It was what he stayed up at night about, what he worked hard to accomplish, and when he got here, that wasn't enough. He worked harder yet, because he always wanted to be in law enforcement. He wanted to be a police officer. This is the kind of guy you want in your community. This is the guy you want in your community because he believes in America. In fact, he just took a selfie with himself and his Christmas tree. He has a young wife, a beautiful 5-month-old daughter, and he gets gunned down by an illegal alien because he's trying to protect his community by stopping a drunk driver. And he's murdered in cold blood by a man who's not even supposed to be here. And it's the worst story possible. But what this gives us is the ability to see the difference. To compare and contrast what it's like for those that want to come here, that want to assimilate, that want to become part of America, and those that just don't care. Those that come here waving flags of other nations and throwing bricks and defying the laws and saying, those laws don't apply to me. America, you owe me. Ron Singh didn't show up in America from Fiji with that idea or that attitude at all. No. He showed up and said, how can I help? Where can I contribute? How hard can I work to give back the very best? And that's what he did for more than 7 years in Newman, California, on a small police force there, a police force that until yesterday had never lost an officer in the line of duty. And it is a crushing loss for these people, not just in the community of Newman, but Stanislaus County, California, Merced County, California, where the manhunt was focused. Now they've brought the man into custody. They've brought him into custody. They had pictures of him at the liquor store buying booze and liquor and getting ready to go out. Apparently for the cruise where he was drinking and brought in as a drunk driver. But before he could be brought to justice, he opened fire. Opened fire with a gun that by definition is illegal. Illegal aliens in the United States cannot possess firearms. Those here in this country unlawfully cannot possess firearms. It's a 10-year felony. And if you use that gun in the commission of a felony, which obviously he did, it becomes a capital crime. And so now, this illegal alien, cop killer, will end up occupying time and space in one of our prisons. We will spend time making sure that he is housed and fed and taken care of. And if we had just not allowed that person into our country, and like so many like him that come here and commit crimes, if we didn't allow them to be here, we wouldn't have this burden. And this is all going on while the government is in day 7 of its shutdown. A shutdown, we're told, because the Democrats tell us that Donald Trump is never going to get his wall. Let me guarantee you something. It isn't Donald Trump's wall. It's my wall. It's your wall. It would have been Ron Singh's wall. But it's too late for him and his widow and the 5-month-old daughter that will never remember her father, who was a true patriot, a true American, a guy who was willing to work as hard as he could to do anything to become a member of law enforcement because that was his lifelong dream. To be an American with a badge to protect those around him, to protect the community. But those in California, they didn't return the favor. You see, those in California, politicians, they put things in place like sanctuary cities where they flaunt the laws of the federal government. Those in California put forth laws where if a violent offender is picked up on a misdemeanor, and ICE knows that that's a felony, a violent felon, and they say, we need you to put a detainer on that guy. Local law enforcement isn't allowed to do that anymore. That's out the door. That's out the window. That doesn't happen anymore. So what happens is, even if you have a violent felon in your possession, somebody that's in the country illegally, you can't work with ICE and send them back to where they belong, which is not here. It was very overwhelming for those in the small town of Newman. Very overwhelming. The police chief there, emotional, taken, torn up, almost unable to speak when he learned of the death of his colleague, his co-worker in law enforcement, and maybe more importantly, his friend. Just take a moment and listen to the way he had to explain the loss of Ron Singh. Bite 3. Go.
I did not know Christmas morning at 4 o'clock in the morning when I said goodbye to him and sent him off to his family that it would be the last time that I saw him. This was Ron. He moved the Christmas tree in front of the flag to take his own picture to send to us. He wasn't wanting to work Christmas, but he knew he had to. It just fell on his squad, and he was okay with it. He was a canine handler. His dog there is Sam. Sam was with him when this tragic event took place. When I pulled Sam out of the car, Sam was wearing a Mrs. Claus outfit that he'd put on her because it's just the kind of guy he was. Just
That's
did little
the kind of
things
guy
like
I want
that,
in my community.
just to bring.
That right there is a police officer I want looking out for myself and my children if I can at the moment. That's the kind of police officer I want in the streets of America. And I don't know why the left would try to convince you time and time and time again. The conservatives are racist. The border wall is a racist idea. The border wall is an idea that's based on xenophobia and fear of brown people and people of color. It's absolutely absurd. You know it, and so do I, because I would have been proud to have Ron Singh on patrol having my 6. Absolutely. That guy could have had my 6 anytime, protected us from behind, from in front, and instead we'll be looking at a funeral because another guy that got across the border, like as many as 3,000 do any given day in America, was unvetted, unchecked, and then ultimately unleashed on all of us, especially Ron Singh. We have to do better. We have to demand that the $5 billion for the border wall, for the barrier, for the fence, whatever you want to call it, that money gets appropriated now because it's about 250 miles of fencing. It's got to happen. We've got to move forward in this conversation. We can't stay here in this stagnant conversation going nowhere when people like Officer Singh are gunned down, doing their job, trying to protect the rest of us. Enough. We have to move to a place where we can take control of our border. Borders aren't exactly new. They were here a couple of 100 years ago, 100 years ago, 50 years ago. In fact, until just a couple of years ago, all of the Democrats that now say it's racist and xenophobic, they too are for a wall and for border security and for ending illegal immigration. But now they think they can get a political win. It's not about making the country safer. It's not about making America safer. It's about getting a political win. It's about defeating Donald Trump any way they can. It's about defeating Donald Trump any time they can. It's the same reason they attacked Donald Trump for going and visiting the troops a couple of hours after Christmas had concluded. It's the reason NBC News can't admit that they were wrong when they said Donald Trump didn't go visit the troops at Christmas. He did. He arrived a couple of hours after Christmas Day had officially ended, and so what? It's because they can't admit they're wrong. The truth is we need border security. The truth is we need safety. The truth is we need more people like Ron Singh in this country and less people like the man that murdered him. This is where we have to go. We're better than this, America, and I'll tell you right now, I do not want to be California. Call your congressman. Call your congresswoman. Call your member of Congress. Call the United States senator that represents you. Demand that the wall get built. We deserve better. Ron Singh's widow deserved better. It won't be a good 2019 for her. It'll start with the burial of her husband, a good man. A good man. Steve Gruber sitting in on the Chad Benson Show. We'll be right back.
Got that crippling, sneezing, stuffy head thing going on? Time for your daily dose of Vitamin Chad.
Continuing the conversation now on the Chad Benson Show. Steve Gruber sitting in for Chad on this Friday, who's still out enjoying some last-minute Christmas, New Year's festivities, and good for Chad. I hope he's enjoying time with his family. Very serious conversations here. Because you look at everything that California is doing, and they're trying to push it upon all of us. In the last election, the midterm election, there were only 7 Republicans left when the dust cleared for the congressional delegation out of California. Out of the 53 that are there, 7 are Republicans. In the state Senate, 11 Republicans out of 40, so 29 Democrats. In the state assembly, 60 seats out of 80 are Democrats. Republicans are nothing more than a footnote in California. They have single-party rule, so anything that happens there going forward is all theirs. When California continues to be the least educated state in America, my God, that's on them. But what's really important today is not the fact that we should do nothing the way they do in California. What's important today is that we focus on cleaning up this problem. The president came out hard, and the president came out serious, tweeting this a few hours ago. We will be forced to close the southern border entirely if the obstructionist Democrats do not give us the money to finish the wall and also change the ridiculous immigration laws that our country is saddled with. Amen. Amen. I don't agree with everything this president does, but I agree with that. If you can't get this fixed, and think about that number, as many as 3,000 illegal immigrants a day, illegal aliens coming across the border. That's 1 million a year coming across our border, unchecked, unvetted, unleashed on the rest of us. That can't continue. And with those kind of numbers, you know that it's absolutely absurd to believe that somehow there are only 11 or 12 million illegals in America. But I'm going to tell you, the murder of this police officer has me angry. I mean, I am beside myself with anger because of what's going on here, and it has to stop. I cannot imagine being Nancy Pelosi and trying to tell the widow, to tell Officer Singh's widow, we're doing the right thing. Really? How exactly are you doing the right thing? Because California has 35% of all the welfare cases in America and just 12% of the population. Your lack of education in California tops everybody else. Your race to the bottom has defeated Mississippi and West Virginia, New Mexico and Alabama. You're less educated than those states. You know, the states that California people make fun of. The deplorable states, the states that are full of rednecks and Trump supporters and Bible clingers and gun clingers. Yeah, all of those places. California, newsflash, you're behind all of them. That's how bad your policies are. Because it doesn't matter where you go in this world, whether it's California, New York, or Cuba, Venezuela, Russia, Red China, it doesn't matter. Communism, socialism, Marxism has a 100% failure rate. 100%. And when you look at a situation in California, for example, where well less than 50% of the taxpayers are paying the bills for everyone, that is unsustainable. When people in California realize if they vote for Democrats, and oftentimes Republicans too, if they vote for Democrats and weak-willed Republicans, feckless is a good word for it, that money will flow into their accounts because they will get a chance to cash more checks. You vote for us. Otherwise, those dirty Republicans are going to take away your Social Security and let old people die. They're going to take away money from kids and let young kids die. They're going to take money away from everybody. Everybody will die. I mean, that's the kind of histrionics we deal with when we deal with the alt-left. The alt-left being not your mother and father's Democratic Party. We have something today that is far more sinister. We have people believing that Bernie Sanders is some sort of a clairvoyant, that he's some sort of a Pied Piper, a person to be followed. Bernie Sanders and his ideas are a disaster. They're a road to financial and moral bankruptcy. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is so defenseless intellectually, she believes that if you have two jobs, it somehow affects the unemployment rate. And that's just one easy example of her ignorance. She didn't realize that Jesus was on the way back to Nazareth so he could be counted in the census, and they just happened to stay in the manger in the barn because, well, the hotel was full. No, she thought he was a refugee and equated that to those folks coming up from El Salvador and Honduras. Well, the president says there'll be no more money for Honduras or El Salvador. We will cancel deals with Mexico and others. If you don't get these caravans under control, if you don't get these things put together, the new NAFTA, this USMCA, it'll be gone. It'll be out the door, as it should be. As it should be. You know, Teddy Roosevelt used to say, speak softly and carry a big stick. I think Donald Trump says, scream your head off and carry a big stick. Whatever it takes. Tweet loudly and do whatever it takes, but make the country safe. Whatever it takes. Whatever it takes, make the country safe. So at this point, I'm wondering how it's going to break. Do more people support the president or not support the president when it comes to shutting down the government and demanding border security and a border wall? Steve Gruber sitting in for Chad Benson on The Chad Benson Show.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent in thought and punk rock in life. It's The Chad Benson Show.
The conversation continues on a Friday. Steve Gruber sitting in for Chad Benson this day. Chad out enjoying some holiday cheer, I hope, and having some time with his family. A lot of important conversations going on right here, though. As we talk about what's going on with the government shutdown, we talk about the search and now the capture of a cop killer, or should I say alleged cop killer in California. One, the police officer, a legal immigrant who came here and did everything right. Became a guy who gave to the community, who gave 7 years of his life to the police department, and then the guy he pulls over as a suspected drunk driver who opens fire on him and ultimately kills him. Just a terrible story and a terrible way to end all of it. And joining me now is Dave Ray, the Director of Communications for the Federation for American Immigration Reform, called FAIR. And Dave, it was an important day for me to reach out because it's a gut-wrenching story to me. I can only imagine this guy has a beautiful family, a young wife, a 5-month-old daughter. He took a special picture of himself with the Christmas tree and the American flag. Here's a guy who just wanted to be an American, and an American he was through and through, a real patriot. He is what... If you're going to talk about everything right with immigration, legal immigration, this is the guy.
Yeah.
Ron Singh is the guy, and everything wrong with the illegal immigration is the man that murdered him. Dave, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, and good to be with you again, Steve. Yeah, it's absolutely heartbreaking to look at the picture of Officer Singh with his newborn son and his wife, and that last photo that they took, and thinking that you're right. Everything that's right about legal immigrants, about people aspiring to better themselves, to come here to make themselves better and make America better by doing that. Officer Singh was doing that, and he was gunned down in cold blood by an illegal alien who had 2 prior arrests for DUI. So this is somebody who should not have been in the country in the first place. That's the tragedy of the loss of innocent life through criminal illegal aliens.
You know, Dave, it's interesting, and I want to jump in on that point because this is really important to me, because this has come up in my mind, a question that I want to ask time and time again, because one of the most common offenses I see from illegal aliens is drunk driving, right? And so previous DUIs, being pulled over for a third, which means he's driving a 6,000-pound missile down the highway. Who knows who gets killed? Maybe he hits a school bus. Maybe he hits school, whatever it is. But I go back 20, 25 years when we had the big push in America to end drunk driving, and Mothers Against Drunk Driving came out, and the laws in the states changed, and the legal alcohol limit has gone from 0.10 to 0.08 to 0.05, I believe, in a couple of states now, because drunk driving is taken very seriously. People don't think it's funny, it's not good, it's not overlooked, and yet somehow We've got these illegal aliens in our country that I see on a regular basis seeing reports of drunk driving, and yet they get to stay. How is that? I know people that had DUIs in college. This is a true story. Of course, all my stories are true, Dave, but this is a true story. A friend of mine that worked for me, we were going into Canada to film some television 10 or 15 years ago now. We got stopped at the border, and they said, they asked this and this. Oh, you had a DUI when you were in college at Michigan State University 15 years ago.
Right.
The nation of Canada wouldn't let him in. He had never been in trouble before, never been in trouble afterwards. They denied him entry to the nation of Canada 15 years after he got a DUI as a teenager, 19 years old, at Michigan State University, and yet you're a drunk driver in America, you're an illegal alien. I guess it's cool. Whatever, carry on. How is that?
Well, you would have thought that California had an epiphany with the death of Kate Steinle several years back, the young woman who died while walking hand in hand with her father in broad daylight in San Francisco, was gunned down by an illegal alien who had been deported 5 times with many criminal convictions. And I think America thought this is California's epiphany. They're going to see, San Francisco was a sanctuary city. This person who killed Kate Steinle admitted that he kept returning to San Francisco because it was a sanctuary city. It seemed like the writing was on the wall and that San Francisco was finally going to wake up and realize that it was placing the health and well-being of criminal illegal aliens above its own law-abiding citizens. That's not what happened. Shockingly, San Francisco not only doubled down on its sanctuary laws, the state of California became a sanctuary state that same year.
Yeah, Governor Moonbeam, Jerry Brown, and I say this, and I'm not joking when I say this. I don't blame Jerry Brown for the death of this officer. I blame the illegal alien that pulled the trigger that killed him. However, you cannot deny or look away from the idea that they are complicit with these deaths because they allow it to perpetuate itself. You know that if a violent criminal illegal alien is arrested in California, but they're only arrested on a misdemeanor, and the local police officers can say, look, he was convicted of 3 felonies that were violent previously, and ICE wants a detainer on that person. Local law enforcement by law now has to say, no, we're not going to do that. And how absurd is that?
Well, it is absurd. It's just I'm not going to say Jerry Brown caused this, but his fingerprints are certainly all over the corpse of Officer Singh.
Right, that's my point.
Yeah, he enabled this to happen by not allowing state and local law enforcement officials to cooperate with Immigration and Customs Enforcement and remove dangerous aliens from our country. I mean, you hear the angel moms and the angel dads come out. These are parents who've lost their most beloved possessions, their children, to people who shouldn't have been in the country in the first place, had been in the hands of law enforcement, and then oftentimes are released. And, these are preventable crimes, which is what makes it so outrageous. So not only was this guy let go twice for DUI, and like you said, was driving a 6,000-pound bullet down the road. He could have plowed. Anybody could have been dead from this dude.
Correct.
He got released right back onto the road. Now he's been caught trying to dash back to Mexico with his brother. And who's going to pay the ultimate price is Officer Singh, who will never know his young son and not grow old with his wife. It's absolutely tragic. This time of year makes it even worse. So
let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Dave Ray is here. He is the Director of Communications for the Federation for American Immigration Reform, FAIR. You guys believe that we should not only clamp down on illegal immigration, but should scale back legal immigration. And for those of you that may not know, America brings in more than 1 million people a year legally, like Officer Singh, legally, which is more than every other country in the world combined. So this idea that somehow America's an unfair place and we don't do this or that, nonsense. These people are voting with their feet. These caravans are coming here. Now, they may be flying the flags of El Salvador and Guatemala and throwing bricks at our, federal agents at the border, but they still want to be here for some reason. Even though America is so unfair and Donald Trump is so awful, they still want to run across our border. They don't want to stay in Mexico, and they don't want to go south to Venezuela. Crazy, right? So here we are looking at all of this. Where do we go from here? Because what I want to know is this finally going to be the wake-up call? Is Officer Singh, because I thought, Dave, earlier this year, that what happened to Molly Tibbetts in Iowa, the college student that was murdered by the illegal alien brutally in a cornfield and left there to rot, I thought that would finally be it. Of course, the mainstream media ran like cockroaches in the light from that story. They probably will do the same like cockroaches from the light for this story, except this is a police officer, a legal immigrant murdered by an illegal alien. This is the compare and contrast moment. Here's what we want. We want a merit-based system where good people like Ron Singh come to our country because they want to be here and contribute. And then you've got this piece of garbage that is a murderous thug that we don't want in our country. What part of this do you not understand, people?
Well, ask Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer right now. Chuck Schumer was all that was standing in the way of construction of a border wall, which I've seen the border wall with my own eyes, and it effectively kept the caravan out of the United States. So don't let anybody tell you that the border wall doesn't work, because I've been there before the wall existed, and I've been there after the wall went up south of San Diego. It made a world of difference. We have a Senate and a House of Representatives that's soon going to be in the hands, a Senate that won't cooperate and go along with President Trump's $5 billion request. They won't even not go along with it. They won't even make a counter offer. It's as if they're simply going to refuse to have this conversation because they don't like the president.
That's all it is. You nailed it, Dave.
Yeah,
there it is. It's not because Democrats think the place is safer with no border security. They know better. It's not like they believe it's going to be a better country. They know better. They're doing it because they want to score cheap political points against the president, and they want to accuse him. And so does the media. The people that carry the water for the alt left, like CNN or MSNBC. Well, he doesn't like people of color. Hello, let me explain this to you, folks. Clue Bus just showed up. Officer Singh was a person of color. The person that murdered him was a person of color. And as I have been saying all day today, Officer Singh, Ronald Singh, is a person that I would want to have in my community, protecting me and my family. He's a guy that I'd want around my kids to make sure they're safe. It has absolutely nothing to do with race.
No, he would be a role model for my son as well. I'm very proud of what Officer Singh did with his life, with the choices that he made, with the commitment he showed to this country. What we have nowadays are people who have no argument against immigration enforcement, so they have to resort to name calling.
You're a bigot.
And
you're xenophobic.
Senator Schumer can't justify the open borders that we have. One, because he voted in 2006 to authorize 700 miles of border wall, but number two, because he knows it's insane.
And so did Senator Obama, and so did Senator Hillary Clinton, and so did all of them.
Right. 23 other Democrats voted for that kind of secure fencing. Listen, let me tell you, it works. It's money well spent. Illegal immigration is costing this country $116 billion with a B dollars.
Hold on, Dave. Dave Ray here, Director of Communications for the Federation of American Immigration Reform. Almost out of time, but $116 billion. So you're saying then, if we're losing that much money, that having $5 billion at this juncture to build 250 miles of wall, that would be a good investment.
Money well spent. It'll save us in the long run. It'll make us safer. It'll make America more effective at keeping out terrorists and drug cartels and criminal aliens like the guy who gunned down Officer Singh.
Clearly what I've got out of this, Dave, you're a bigot.
If you don't have an argument, you have to racialize everything, and that's really where we are right now. You got to racialize everything.
Yeah, you've got emotional problems. You need more medication, Dave. Clearly, real quickly here for the folks that maybe are not familiar with your organization, the Federation for American Immigration Reform, FAIR.
Right.
Where do people find you? Where do they find out more?
Yeah. Please visit us on the web at fairus.org. We have 2 million members and supporters across the country. We're the nation's oldest and largest organization looking to crack down on illegal immigration and reform legal immigration in the national interest. We want to make immigration better for America and better for the immigrants by moving to a merit-based immigration system. Check us out. Become a member. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter at Fair Immigration.
And the hill only gets steeper come January. Dave, thank you so much for being here on this Friday. Greatly appreciated.
Great to be with you, my friend. Nice chat. And it was a sad topic, but needed to be talked about.
You got that right. It's a tough topic, but it has to happen. Dave Ray, thank you so much. Director of Communications, Federation for American Immigration Reform. Steve Gruber sitting in for Chad Benson on The Chad Benson Show. We'll be right back.
Take one giant step to the left.
Did you ever have anyone embarrass you like this?
One giant step to the right.
That's all that separates you from everything else that came from slime.
You are now in the alt-middle, where it's just right. Call if you get weird. This is The Chad Benson Show.
Welcome back to The Chad Benson Show. Steve Gruber sitting in. As we have gone through in detail today, we are witnessing in California the complete unraveling of, in many ways, Western civilization. I mean, you look at the things that these people stand for. They support the idea that we need more social programs, even though those social programs have resulted in California being number one in welfare cases. 35% of the people that take welfare in America come from California, but California only has 12% of the nation's population. We have people in California that would have you believe that open borders are a good idea. And yet, we have officers like Ron Singh gunned down by an illegal alien, even though Ron Singh went through the process to become an American, a naturalized citizen. He's the guy you want in your neighborhood. We have people in California that would have you believe that somehow what they're doing is right, even though they have a $1 trillion debt and deficit. California is a state that's teetering on bankruptcy, and it didn't happen by accident. It didn't happen by accident that California has the lowest high school graduation rate. It didn't happen by accident that California has the highest number of adults over 25 by percentage and therefore by raw number as well that have never made it through the 9th grade. This is not by accident. This is the social structure and fabric of the left taken to its ultimate conclusion, which is always disaster. And it doesn't matter where it's tried, whether it's in California or in Venezuela or Cuba or Russia or Red China, wherever communism, socialism, Marxism is rolled out and implemented, the end result is always failure. Failure. It's one of the few things you can count on in this world. If you roll out a socialist system, no matter how well intended, it fails because the road to hell is paved with those intentions. And the road to oblivion in government is paved with socialist notions, Marxist ideas, and communist implementation. You can't get around it. You can't get around it. It's irrefutable. There is not a socialist nation on the planet that is surviving and thriving. Well, Steve, look at the Scandinavian nations. You know, I'm glad you brought that up, Steve. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Steve. It's my medication. Don't worry about it. The reason the Scandinavian nations are thriving and doing better now is because they're getting away from being socialist. In fact, if you go look at Norway and Denmark, you'll find that those nations, among others, are coming back to the right, not into the left, but back to the right, because they found going too far to the left was destroying their countries. And it does. Why is it that California can't figure it out? And here's the other thing for you to consider. As you look at California, sanctuary cities, open borders, back and forth, the Kate Steinle case, whatever it is. You have this mass influx of illegals into California. So is it coincidence that your high school graduation rates are plummeting? Is it coincidence that you have by far the highest population of uneducated adults over 25, which, by the way, the raw number is on its way to 3 million people, which is more people than live in 15 states. Think about that number. The number of adults in California that never got out of the 9th grade, never went past that in an educational setting, that's a bigger number than the entire population of 15 states of our beautiful United States. And they want to do it for all of us, right? They want to do it for all of us. I'm going to go ahead and say pass California, clean up your act, secure the border, protect us. Steve Gruber sitting in for Chad Benson. It's been a great pleasure. We'll talk soon.
This is the Chad Benson Show.